worthy of trust by giving the public a final say on Brexit. However, his assessment, Theresa May would rather risk a general election than losing a referendum. Turning to The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh says history will judge Mrs May harshly, and if the UK manages to strike a Brexit deal, it will be no thanks to her. Turning to The Times, a rather gloomy Max Hastings says that British children shouldn't be expected to stay in an inward-looking country when a world outside awaits them. An artistic theme in the cartoons this morning. Brussels chiefs looking on in disbelief as Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn remained moored to the pier in Molyn's version of Jericho's famous Raft of the Medusa. That's in The Times. Sticking with the high culture, Salvatore Britannia in Blower's cartoon in The Telegraph doubts over its authenticity, though, just like the original Salvatore Mundi, which some critics claim is a fake and not by Leonardo da Vinci. In the Daily Mail, Mark Almond asks whether it's time to update the UK's treason laws to deal with the problem of returning jihadis. Interesting, that. And writing in the Daily Telegraph, the Culture Secretary, Jeremy Wright, says the era of self-regulation is ending and it's time for social media firms to put the safety of customers first. Well, with me today to look through all of those, chief leader writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the talk radio presenter and columnist for the FT, James Max. Guys, lovely to see you. But guess what? Should we leave these for just a moment? Obviously, there is an event happening at some time this morning. A group of Labour MPs are going to say something. We assume it's resigning the whip. What do we make of all this, Sonia? Is this what the Labour Party needs right now?
I don't think it's what Jeremy Corbyn will be hoping for right now, as much as perhaps he will try to put a brave face on it. But I think this has sort of been inevitable now for a number of months, and we've been building towards it. There's been a lot of talk in Westminster. Is it going to happen, isn't it, over recent weeks? And really, I think there's a lot of reasons why this small group of MPs have been thinking about leaving Labour, but there are two key issues at stake here that have really, I think, sent them sort of over the cliff, as it were. One is the extent to which Labour is dealing with anti-Semitism, and my paper's been very, very critical of the way that the Labour Party has been quite lax in many ways in dealing with complaints about anti-Semitism within the party. And the second is, of course, Brexit, and some of these MPs are incredibly unhappy with the fact that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't come round and backed a second referendum on the Brexit question. So I think we've got to a stage now where some MPs have feel like they've really got nothing to lose. They're probably going to be facing deselection battles, so why not do it?
But James, there are three little letters hanging over the heads of this handful of Labour MPs, SDP. We remember what happened.
We do remember what happened, but on the other hand, I don't think we've ever been quite in the situation that we are at the moment, that both political parties are split both between left and right within each other, and they're also split between Brexit and Remain. And so we have the most extraordinary political situation. I think people have been fighting all sorts of battles, which is part of the reason why Brexit has been such a mess. And it's because we have not organised ourselves correctly. We didn't, and we don't respect, when we have a referendum, I don't think we respect it very much, because then we put it into our parliamentary system. So we've ended up putting a referendum which was clear, 52-48, into a parliamentary system, which doesn't necessarily go with that.
But I think one of the reasons why when the mess we're in was it was a vague question, yes or no, leave or remain, and actually it didn't. It didn't give a firm mandate.
Let's bring in Matthew Dancona in The Guardian, because this is a useful leaping off point. I mean, I've lost count of the number of people that have told me, and the received wisdom is that the last thing the Conservatives want right now is a general election. Matthew Dancona, if it's a binary choice between election and referendum, then it's game on for another trip to the polls.
I think he's right, actually, and I think the last thing Theresa May probably wants is a referendum because she would be worried about the legacy that would leave her if she lost. And I think the fact that she probably would go for an election before a referendum says how much she wants to really, really avoid a referendum. And actually, I mean, the problem is there's so much uncertainty in the polls, and no one really knows what would happen were there to be a referendum.
Well, we do know that last time out, the Labour Party managed to make massive gains in a very short space of time.
That is true, and I think there'll be a lot of her backbenchers who'll be incredibly worried worried about it. The point that Matthew Dancona is making in his article, though, is given this system that we've got where both parties are split on Brexit, actually, what is a general election going to resolve? It's not going to resolve anything. And for that reason, Matthew is right to say a referendum on May's deal would be much, much more decisive and a way out of the parliamentary gridlock.
That's a nonsense. I mean, the point is...
It's not a nonsense, Max.
Well, you can call me James if you like. The point is...
Sorry, James.
That's all right. The point is that I don't think a referendum solves any issues. It doesn't, nor does a general election. Look, the last general election was a mess because it became a mess because the Conservatives made such a hash of it and they clouded their own situation by creating a manifesto that didn't reflect what people had previously voted them in for. So you end up with this situation that the core group of people who voted to remain and the core group who voted to leave, none of them are going to change their minds. A referendum solves nothing, and it's almost a question as to how many people you can get to turn out as opposed to whether or not it's really that the mood of the country has changed.
And the blame game has clearly already started. And we look at Trevor Kavanagh's column in The Sun, you know, if ultimately there is a deal done, his assessment is nothing to do with the PM. I mean, is that entirely fair?
I mean, I'm no fan of Theresa May, but I think Kavanagh is possibly being a bit too harsh on Theresa May. I completely disagree. He calls her a stubborn, inflexible Remainer who ignored the clearly stated instructions of the British people. Actually, what I think she did was drew some red lines that weren't clear from the referendum. She said, I'm going to end freedom of movement. We can't be part of a customs union. And those red lines have driven her to the withdrawal agreement, which just isn't good enough. It doesn't deliver a Brexit that MPs are willing to back. So I think Kavanagh's sort of got it a bit topsy-turvy here, and he seems to think, well, let's just leave in a no deal. It'll be absolutely fine, and we can negotiate our way back to a free trade deal after that. I mean, that would incredibly weaken our negotiating hand.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it at this. We will see you next hour, and James, you can go first that time, okay, I promise. But for now, stick with us.